Today's guest built a billion-dollar portfolio of internet brands for Alex Hormozi.
I treat ads as very different, to be quite honest. There's so much Alex can do that can just generate revenue for the business that a lot of it is just not worth it.
We sit down with him and dig into what it takes to build a marketing machine that drives rapid growth and online sales in 2025.
I don't necessarily care if it's good on content if it doesn't perform as an ad. I want it to be able to really get someone's attention in a busy newsfeed.
Meet Tobias Salon. The director of marketing at acquisition.com has worked with some of the biggest names in the online space.
Two of the largest businesses I've seen in the last 12 months were built off the back of affiliates. I think they're on pace to do like 1.1 billion.
And his talents as one of the top direct response marketers in the world have helped him generate over $250 million in annual portfolio revenue for the Hormozis.
And so a lot of people just don't comprehend the level of scale that you have access to across platforms. You're talking about billions of people who access the internet on a daily basis.
Today, we'll be taking a closer look at how he does it. From how he built a 29,000 person affiliate program in just 6 weeks.
I think community is going to be huge for building large scale affiliate programs.
To how he launched and scaled Alex Hormozi's recent book, $100 Million Leads, and so much more. So let's get into it.
I think you can sell a lot of things. In order to sell something well, though, requires both skill and a level of depth.
Tobias, welcome to Dubai.
Thank you so much, Jordan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Cool. Well, I want to kick off by just going into your story, really, because, there's a lot to it. We've known each other quite a few years.
Yeah.
Can you just take me back from, what you were studying?
Yeah.
Because it's quite random, right? And then all the way through to what you're doing today in your career.
Yeah. So I'll start at the very beginning. The first one is I thought I wanted to be a doctor. So I went and studied biomedicine. And I wasn't good enough to go straight into becoming a doctor, at least in the UK. So there's like that workaround where you do biomed and then you go on to become a doctor, or you look at studying overseas. And so I looked at both, decided I wanted to do the UK one. Lasted 3 months.
What happened?
So I started, and then I was in a lab coat under fluorescent lights, making bacteria glow in the dark. And I just saw like 40 years ahead, and I just didn't want to live in a lab for the rest of my life. So I dropped out, didn't know what I wanted to do, as everyone kind of does that. And I discovered a wine course. So it was 3 days, great weather, fantastic wine. And if I'm being honest, there were some beautiful women on this course. And they said that you could study it. So that's what I did. I flipped a coin. And within maybe like 2 weeks, I had enrolled on a 3-year international wine business degree. And I spent 3 years kind of drinking wine. At that time, I was also doing copywriting and marketing. So it was just like on the side stuff, working with clients and things of that nature.
What kind of copy or work were you doing?
It all. So I was doing some stuff within the wine world. So I had worked for multiple wine startups. I worked for a company called Pingza at the time. And we did events. So this was like a wine matching app. The guy had made a bunch of money in real estate, and he discovered that at dinners, he didn't know anything about wine, and it was a pain point for him. So he decided to build an app around it. And then I worked for, this one was interesting. It was called the Brighton Wine Company. And the founder, he used to be on the executive team for Virgin in the UK. And the reason that was interesting was his paradigm on online e-commerce was rooted in when it was difficult. So he talked about when Virgin Wines wanted to sell online, they had to invest like £1 million to be able to even do any transactions. And so for him, coming from that world, to be able to just sign up to Shopify and buy access to the ability to take payments, have a shop online for like $30 a month, like he was living in like the Wild West of the internet. And I think that's quite a refreshing perspective when we take for granted just how easy online e-commerce can be.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot from that guy, not on the marketing side, but more that paradigm. The paradigm was a big thing. He came from a huge corporate structure to basically a startup. And while I was there, I was doing everything, like helping with running some ads, email marketing, product listings. Like I was a bit of a gun for hire. So wherever I could write copy, that's kind of where I went to.
And how did you get started with copy though? Like how did you learn and
Yeah.
get into that world?
Yeah, great question. So something that had happened is I got obsessed with business books, even like from a very young age. I think
What
I
are
was
we talking? Which books?
so two books. So it's when I look back, I can't believe those two books were next to each other. It was The Ultimate Sales Letter by Dan Kennedy, and then a book called Common Sense Direct Marketing from a guy called Drayton Bird, who was essentially David Ogilvy's right-hand copyman. And The Ultimate Sales Letter is kind of niche as it is. Common Sense Direct Marketing, that's like even more niche. And they were just sat in a charity shop next to each other, and for whatever reason, I picked both of them up at the same time.
Would you say you knew pretty early that that was kind of your skill set and your passion?
No, I hated writing.
Interesting.
Yeah, like, and to be honest, I still kind of hate writing to this day. The reason I like marketing is I like going for the response. So I didn't view copywriting as writing. I view it as kind of applied psychology and applied salesmanship to the written word or to some form of medium.
So that's almost like the tool to get the goal. And
Yeah.
you're interested in kind of the goal,
Yeah.
the end result.
Yeah, and you don't have to be a good writer. Like, I'm certainly not a good writer. My grammar sucks half the time. Like, whether it makes sense the other part of the time, like sometimes it's fluffy. But something I think I'm particularly good at is evoking an emotional response and being able to get attention. And it's been able to carry me quite far.
For sure. Can we just kind of progress on that career journey then? So you started off
Yeah.
in kind of this wine space.
Yeah.
I think when we met, you'd worked at a real estate company and you were doing email stuff yourself.
Yeah.
What was the process like to get there? And then what were the next steps after that?
Yeah. So throughout the journey, this kind of ties into direct mail. So I did two things with direct mail. Well, I did several things with direct mail, but two things that stand out is one is I used the leaflets that used to come through my letterbox as a lead list. So something my dad taught me, I learned some sales from my dad, and he taught me this MAN principle. So it stands for money, authority, need. And it's a way that you can kind of qualify a prospect. And so I figured that people or businesses that were spending money to basically send out letters or market, they had the money. If I could get to the decision maker, then that was the right person to talk to. And then at the time, I didn't know what need they had, but the fact that they're investing money into it suggests a behavior where they're prepared to invest or they want customers.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a pretty hot lead list, and I had an in or a lead. I used to take these letters and I used to go and then knock on the door. And I remember the first time doing that, I was scared. Like I did a lap around the block.
To calm your nerves.
Yeah, and just like hyping myself up.
Yeah.
And it went as bad as I'd imagined in my...
The worst case scenario.
Yeah, because there were like two doors to get into this building, and I got stuck at the second one. So I'm just looking at this receptionist trying to open the second door. She's looking at me wondering what I'm doing. And I found out later that there was the business owner in the corner. So I did actually manage to get...
Watching you?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I came in and anything I'd prepared just went out the window.
Yeah.
And I pitched the receptionist, which you don't do that. You have to like get past the gatekeeper.
Mm-hmm.
But I was very lucky because it was the business owner in the corner that watched like some kid basically come in and like
Stumble through.
Yeah, clutching this leaflet that they'd been sending out and just saying that I could write it better. And thankfully she believed me and she gave me a chance.
Nice.
And so I helped them rewrite that. And then in the process, I also said, did you know you can run this online? Mm-hmm. Whatever costs that you are doing to send it to the local area, it's like, I forget what I quoted her, but on Facebook at the time, you could see the cost to reach 1,000 people. And I was like, you can run it in the local area for a fraction of the cost.
Yeah.
Let's try it. And that's what we did.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then what was next? So you've kind of worked at this place for a bit.
Yeah.
How do you get more kind of like online focused after that?
Yeah. So I was all over the place, and I was very good at selling to business owners, or I got very good at it, which was the copywriting. But what I discovered was I wasn't always good at getting results. And there were a few instances where I'd managed to get my foot in the door, managed to get the deal signed. And like, for instance, like in a very short window of time, I'd signed like 18 business owners.
Wow.
In like 3 months.
Is this all from kind of like in person?
In person, and then sending off letters and emails.
Okay.
And I'd closed a very decent chunk, but results were all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And
why was that? Was that because you were focused on like lead gen and trying to fulfill, or you were just doing too much stuff, or what was the reason?
Doing too much stuff, and I was still pretty early. I was just pretty early. I didn't really have a system to get people results. I knew I could write.
So you're just
copy.
kind of figuring it out on the fly.
Yeah. So like, for instance, some businesses, like the one that I knocked on the door at, it didn't really matter that I could write an amazing letter for the company, because a lot of businesses don't have distribution.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was where I was learning, like, it wasn't just copywriting that would give a business results. It was then the distribution of it, or how do you get it into the marketplace? And so for them, that's when I started going into Facebook ads. And I didn't know anything about Facebook ads. The first few times I did it, my confidence took a hit, to be quite honest, because I started running ads for the business and I couldn't get them results. So I refunded them. And then I had my ability to close went down a little bit after that, because to a degree, I think you need confidence in order to sell. But in order to get the confidence back, I decided to get good. And so going into the online world, everything I was making, I started to invest in courses, mentorship, like events, things of that nature. And I started buying systems. So if someone had got good results in an area, I sought out to buy the process or the repeatable steps, the recipes that I could then follow in order to essentially get the same results or similar results.
How do you find and vet the people that you're buying this stuff from?
The reality is I don't think you do. I just did a shotgun approach.
Okay.
So I've bought several hundred online courses, and sometimes you don't know what's in the online course. Like right now, when I'm looking at buying a new online course to learn something, I'm probably the most annoying prospect on the call, because I will ask the person, what does the course actually look like? What is in the course content? Outside of that, a lot of guru businesses are built around a guru. So I will heavily vet what the guru has done. Have they done anything impressive? Is there an end result that I would also want for myself? And quite often I also like the ability to get access to them. So early courses where the person will give you like their WhatsApp number or the ability to hop on Zoom with them, even if it's several thousands extra or whatever the cost is, I will still buy that, just so I can basically get access to the founder or the entrepreneur.
Yeah. And now, like many years kind of down the track, what kind of content are you consuming and what kind of material are you buying to learn? Because I'm assuming you're kind of past the point of entry-level courses, right? So what's the best way for you to learn?
Yeah, great question. I learn a lot through agencies and other marketers who are at a certain level. So when it comes to agencies, I think agencies are typically really like at the forefront, the good ones at least. They have insights across half a dozen or more accounts, and they really get to see what's working. So talking to the founders of agencies has been really eye-opening in terms of what they're seeing with their clients. And then outside of that, I have a very tight network of marketers now that I've started to build. And I will hop on calls with people, particularly if I have a problem I need solving. It's kind of a modern mastermind that it's not like a paid for thing. It's just...
It's your private network.
It's my private network. There's 5... Well, actually, I've got an active Rolodex of several hundred people that I kind of keep an eye out of people who can write VSLs or run ads or do CRO or graphic designers, people who can blow stuff up, make things viral. Like I'll keep an active network of, this is particularly in the online space, but when it comes to like solving a challenge, because they're, because of the categories that people operate in, I know I can go to this category and I'll
So
I'll
you
talk
have
to.
kind of like a network across different channels, and then when the channel need arises, you'll just go to them.
Yeah, precisely.
Cool. Can we talk about kind of where you're at today, career-wise?
Yeah.
So what are you currently kind of doing day to day?
Yeah. So right now my title is the marketing director at acquisition.com. When I look at acquisition.com, it's kind of split in three parts, where you've got the portfolio, you have the book division, and then we since have started workshops.
Yeah.
I'm very lucky in the sense that I've worked across all three divisions.
Mm-hmm.
When I was first brought on, I was brought on the portfolio side to help the portfolio companies grow. I was one of the early subject matter experts.
So just to clarify, you're essentially the marketing guy on behalf of the portfolio companies that Acquisition had purchased at that time.
Yes. So the way that works is it's a portfolio operating model where we have subject matter experts, so like sales, marketing, customer success, product and strategy. And then we would go into the portfolio businesses and help them on that specific domain.
Is that because you had kind of like a layer of expertise across the top that didn't exist in the companies?
It's not that it didn't exist. It's just there's quite a lot of value on outside in, like
not being in the weeds. And,
not being in the weeds, and also I think there's just a lot of value in like support and accountability.
Mm-hmm.
Like once we would help set a corporate vision or quarterly strategy, just having resources available to help execute on that, I think can make a world of difference.
Okay. So that means kind of you guys are setting the strategy at the top level.
Yeah.
And then day to day it's being executed by the
team within the portfolio, a portfolio company specifically.
Okay.
So that's on the portfolio side. On the book division side, I first got kind of started on that side during the 100 Million Leads book launch.
Yeah.
I helped set up the affiliate program. So we scaled from 0 to like 29,000 affiliates.
That's wild.
Within 6 weeks. Worked very close with the agency that we brought on to run the ads. And then I was heavily involved in the emails. So the kind of countdown sequence, the whisper, tease, shout method that we deployed across all channels to Alex's live event.
Okay. And was that the first time that Alex had really activated email?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, prior to that, we'd probably only sent like 2 emails where maybe Alex had created a really good YouTube video that we just wanted to share with the list. And then outside of that, it just kind of sat there.
Okay. So how was, I guess, first off, what was the reason for activating it for the book launch, and what were the results like?
Yeah. So one of my backgrounds is in email marketing. Yeah. It's kind of a core competency of mine. I would say when it comes to a launch, I love building launches around email, like essentially building a hot list and then launching to the hot list. Mm-hmm. And so email is one of the easiest ways to do that from a marketing standpoint, where you can build an engaged list of people to launch something. And so that's kind of where that kind of came from. We could run lots of traffic into a simple opt-in, collect name, email, phone number, and then anyone who gave us permission to contact them, we could then essentially get them excited for the live event. Mm-hmm. And it was really easy once you have someone's email to communicate with them on email. We had their phone number, so we did some SMS and voicemail drops. And then you can also put that list into Facebook as a custom audience. Yep. And you can start hitting people on multiple channels. Mm-hmm. And you can be very intentional with the message that shows up on people's feed.
Okay. Can we talk at a super high level about kind of the results of email for that?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, absolutely. So, we registered over like 560,000 people within that 6-week period. We had we say 500,000 people registered, but after the dust had settled, it was actually closer to 560,000 or like 580,000, somewhere in that ballpark. Email wise, I ran that launch according to KPIs. So when it comes to email, you would kind of expect like 20 to 30% open rates, maybe like a 2% click-through rate, and then you just run it by the numbers. And then with a webinar, you would ordinarily expect on cold traffic, let's say a 20% show-up rate.
Yep.
And so nominally, if we had for 500,000 people registered, 20% show-up rate, you're looking at like, what is that?
100K.
100,000 minimum people. Whether it was the brand or the hype or everything else involved, all the numbers exceeded that. Like I
remember it. It felt like, the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
When people are staying up late, that's what it felt like for the launch.
That's what happened. We had people from Australia doing watch parties at like 2:00 in the morning. And so, I think brand really heavily played a part in that. Whenever like this nebulous concept of brand gets involved, all the KPIs that you might expect from a traditional direct response business, they get elevated.
Mm-hmm.
And so
and that's a core learning from Hormozi, right? He says this a lot.
Yeah,
like
I would say so.
Before he just used to do direct response, and then he realized the power of brand.
Yeah, I think so. And so as an example, in the lead up to the event, open rates increased by 70%.
Wow.
We did some tactics to help do that, to increase that. But like where you've got, let's say 500,000 people on your email list and 60% of people are opening your emails the week before, it's in a really good spot.
Yeah.
And then CTRs were also like 8 times what they should have been.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the day of the event, we broke all the technology. It couldn't handle the volume.
It's a sign of a good launch though, right?
Yeah, I would say so. It really was the entrepreneur event of the year, quote unquote.
Yeah. How important would you say email was as a factor in that?
It was crucial. I mean, without the ability to communicate with people en masse like that, I don't think it would have been the same.
Yeah.
Plus, it gives you targeting on other platforms, like the ability to do a custom audience.
Yeah.
If you're doing this on social media, that you can't guarantee that you post a reel and it shows to your entire audience. So yeah, I would say I would say you can't really do a launch without email.
Okay. Can we talk about affiliates now?
Yeah.
Because how old are you?
27.
Okay. So I feel like everyone under 30
Yeah.
doesn't really think about affiliates.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of the older guys absolutely crush it with affiliates.
Yeah.
Can you just talk to, at a super high level, your kind of background in the space and what you guys did for the launch with affiliates?
Yeah. So it's worth noting, I hadn't really done much with affiliates prior to the launch.
Yeah.
When the big idea for the launch was we were going to use all the methods in the book to get leads for the event. And one of the methods was affiliates. So as the person or a person involved in marketing the event, I had to brush up on essentially everything that we were going to do. And affiliates was one. So what I did is I basically did a masterclass or a crash course in how to do affiliate marketing. I watched all the interviews I could get my hands on. I found out who was the best in the space. And then I just did the 80-20 of what made them good, what were the principles, and how could I employ that myself.
What is the 80-20 with affiliates?
Yeah, so broadly speaking, you break it into 2 areas. You break it into affiliate acquisition, how to get affiliates on in the first place, and then affiliate management. And it's all well and good signing all these people up to promote your stuff, but if you don't know how to manage that, people are not going to really promote for you. Like, you have to ask. And so the way to get the most out of your affiliates is you gamify the process. And again, you want to use the 80-20 rule. The top 20% of your affiliates will produce 80% of your efforts. So that's where a lot of my time went to, was analyzing the leaderboards, who looked like the outliers, who looked like they were going to produce. Yeah. I tracked that manually on a spreadsheet over the 6 weeks, and they all got personal messages from me for that 6-week period, where I would thank them, give them tips on how to promote, and just kind of support them.
So it's like personalized messaging and help for those guys.
Yeah.
And you're focusing on the top guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
And everything that I was learning from that top 20% then went into the emails for the base of affiliates to bring that up.
Okay. And how are you finding and onboarding affiliates that you thought would be good?
So broadly speaking, it's customer acquisition. And so the same methods that we were using to promote the book launch, the 8 ways of getting customers, that was how I was getting affiliates. So I did some cold outbound. I reached out to my network. So I was doing like one-on-one DMs, emails, in some instances picking up the phone to sign people up. In the paid ads funnel, on the thank you page, people coming into the event after they registered, I put an Easter egg, like a little QR code. And it's like, I think it was like mystery, I forget what the exact terminology, but essentially it was a QR code to scan that sent people to the affiliate page. So we had ads, we had emails, content. We did a content push for affiliates. Well, I think we did 2 of those. And then we did a couple of pushes to the email list as well.
Okay.
And yeah, over the course of 6 weeks, it got bigger than I think anyone anticipated.
Okay. So you're kind of casting the net quite wide.
Yeah.
Seeing what kind of results those guys get and then doubling down on the top performers.
Yeah. I mean, the reality is you don't always know who your top affiliates are going to be.
Yeah.
Because it might surprise you. Quite often
Did you find that? It was
Oh,
like
for sure.
surprising who was.
Yeah, I would say so. Quite often it's the micro influencers.
Okay.
It's not like the top celeb guy who everyone knows. And it's not always like the beginner. It's that in-between point. It's someone who's got a raving community that you didn't necessarily realize. And they're able to basically get everyone in their community involved and promoting the event for you. And so like one of the top affiliates who was in the top 10 competing with guys with several million people on their email list. His email list is like 20,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah. And he was just exceptional at email marketing and copywriting. And he had a very engaged email list.
Okay.
And he was able to get a large chunk of his email list registered for the event.
Okay. And how were you incentivizing the affiliates? Like what kind of rewards did they get for doing well?
So there was no financial incentive involved. We had 2 prizes. So for the top 10 affiliates, they could do a private Q&A with Alex. And then everyone else, if they referred 10 people or more, they got 2 free bonus chapters that weren't going to be announced. And so that was kind of how it worked. You referred 10 people and you got the chapters. Or if you wanted to compete for that top 10 spot, then you could have a Q&A with Alex if you won. I will say after the event, it became quite apparent how valuable that Q&A was. I had people reaching out to say how much money they made as a result of that. And they're still making money to this day off of that. So
what do you think so how long was the Q&A? Sorry, what did you say now?
I think it was between 30 minutes and 45 minutes Q&A.
What would the price tag be on that roughly for Alex's time?
I mean, Alex's time is priceless at this point.
I'm thinking like it's 7 figures, right?
I mean, I'm reluctant to put a price on it because of there's so much Alex can do that can just generate revenue for the business that a lot of it is just not worth it. And so in a world where you haven't got access, that's a thing that increases the value. Like Jeff Bezos the ability to buy Jeff Bezos' time doesn't really exist. And so I think if that option did become available, it would probably be at an eye-watering price.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, can we talk about, obviously, Alex has a massive organic content engine. How did you use ads as kind of a complement to that in the launch?
Yeah.
How important was the role of ads?
I treat ads as very different, to be quite honest.
Okay.
I treat an ad as an ad. I always say going into this year, experimenting with some new formats. But historically, I think every ad has to fight for itself. Like going back to the copywriting, a definition that I've always run by is copywriting is salesmanship in print. And so every ad is a salesman. And so as a unit in a marketing campaign, the unit has to perform. It has to have a hook that gets attention. It's got to have a compelling meat, and then a CTA that encourages someone to click.
Yeah.
And so I don't necessarily care if it's good on content if it doesn't perform as an ad. I want it to be able to really get someone's attention in a busy newsfeed.
And are you using ads as kind of net new acquisition, or is it kind of retargeting existing audience? And
Both.
okay.
It's very much both. So obviously cold acquisition is super important, and ads is really good for that. But with Facebook's machine learning, it will go after who it thinks will convert the best. And quite often that is your organic audience.
Yeah.
And if you're using open targeting, you don't necessarily have the control of being like, cut all these people out. And nor do you want to do that, because it will impact your ad performance. So you create an ad that is an ad, but it will show to both your existing audience and then a cold audience.
And how much of the pie would you say that the ads drove?
I would say, when looking back, I would say it was kind of evenly split. So affiliates a third, and ads a third, and then content a third.
Wow.
Yeah.
To me, that's just mind-blowing how effective affiliates are.
Right now I am incredibly biased towards affiliates.
Yeah.
Like 2 of the largest businesses I've seen in the last 12 months were built off the back of affiliates.
Okay.
One is, I think they're on pace to do like 1.1 billion this year.
Wow.
And then the other one, I don't know the revenue of it, but I know they have I know it's a wide range, but they have between 500 to 1,000 people in the business.
Okay. Can we just do a hypothetical on this affiliate point?
Yeah.
What would you say to someone that's got, an info product doing 100K a month off of paid ads and some organic content, maybe Instagram and YouTube?
Yeah.
What would you say to them in terms of like getting started with affiliates? And they've got no background or expertise in the matter.
Yeah, the real answer would be to double down on the stuff that's already working. I would potentially say affiliates is a shiny object.
Okay.
If you really had to push me on how to get the affiliate place up and running, where I would start with would be the existing customer base. It's very simple to put in your online portal as one of the welcome videos. Get 25, get 50% off for everyone you encourage to join, to enjoy this, to join this program. And so that way, similar to what I did with the book launch, where on the thank you page with the QR code, everyone net new coming in, turning them into people who could help promote the event.
Yep.
It's the same story where you can do that with your customers. That would be where I'd start. But ahead of that, I would consider if it was really a initiative you wanted to pursue.
Yeah.
Because it does take work. It takes more work than people realize.
Okay. Would you have any tips for people that want to take it to that next level? So they've kind of decided it's worth the effort. Ad costs are going up.
Yeah.
Maybe they've capped out at a certain point with kind of content or their ability there.
Yeah.
They've gone, through the customer base. They've got some affiliates that way. What can they do next?
Yeah. So I think community is going to be huge for building large-scale affiliate programs. So putting the affiliates in some form of community, whether that's on Discord or in a school group or a WAP group or whatever the platform, having all of them in one place where you can help make them successful. So let's say it's an affiliate program for online content, similar to what you're seeing on TikTok Shop right now.
Yep.
Weekly calls where you're able to show the best formats that are working on the platform that the affiliates can model for yourself, or giving them angles, having a leaderboard, celebrating the successes in the community. I think having that means of communication where people can see all the other affiliates absolutely crushing it.
Interesting.
And just raising the base.
Okay. So it's really managing the affiliates is kind of the next leverage point.
That, I think, is where a lot of the magic is.
Okay.
If you just were to go after micro influencers and then focus on making those guys successful, I think you'd be really able to move the needle. I do think it's worth mentioning, like, building some form of moat. So a community is a moat. I would also suggest, if you can, some form of honestly, I would like a contract where you can get them to promote your stuff exclusively for 6 months or something like that. I know it puts more pressure on the acquisition side,
Yeah.
but in terms of making something that's more sellable as an asset or less likely that someone can come along and steal all the affiliates that you've just trained, I do think having that baked into the system ahead of time is going to be valuable.
Okay, nice. Can we move on past the book launch now?
Yep.
So the third leg of the pie
Yep.
or of the table is the kind of events and workshops, right? Can you just run me through that process? Because this is fairly new, right? And I think a lot of people in the space are starting to take note and,
Yeah.
I don't want to say copy, but head in the same direction, shall we say?
Oh, people are copying it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be
Polite.
yeah, I'm not going to be polite. Like the number of people or offers that I've seen since where people are trying to sell a scaling workshop has increased dramatically. And yeah,
I'm sure they were just kind of divinely inspired.
divinely inspired or not, like it's happening. But what's interesting is, and I know this as well, is like there've been quite a lot of, not quite a lot, but a number of people looking to see what the quote unquote secret sauce is, and funnel hacking, and even speaking to ex-members of the team to see how it works. But it's been amazing. Like the mission is to make real world business available to everyone, and I think having in-person workshops really helps that mission.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it started last year, like in January. It's only really a year old at this point, and yeah, it's been really, really successful.
I've met a lot of people that have either signed up to one that's coming or have been recently.
Yeah, that's cool.
I don't want to dive into kind of why you're doing it or the funnel, etc.
Yeah.
And I think, if people want to know that, they should just sign up, right? I don't think it's super expensive.
No, I don't
So
think
they
so.
should just go.
Yeah, I think it's good value for money. For in terms of events, what's out there, I think it's very super valuable for business owners. And then if you are in the space, marketing, being able to observe it from that angle, I think also has incredible value.
Okay. Just for reference, again, we're not going to kind of dig into it, but there's essentially tiers of type of events, right, based on how big the business is? Is that true?
It's not a question of how big the business is. There are a couple of other workshops, depending on. There are just a couple of other workshops.
Okay, so it's not dependent on size.
No, not
It's
really.
kind of what you're looking for.
The first one is the one with to see if you're a good fit for the room,
Mm-hmm.
and then after that, after that it's not necessarily about qualification because the people have already been pre-vetted.
It's just how much you want, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Can we talk about where events fit in the ecosystem and why they were why you guys created them essentially?
Yeah. So broadly speaking, from an info marketing perspective, I think events are super valuable because from the content side, you've got the ability to have a mechanism to create a lot of content that other people can't copy.
Mm-hmm.
It's very like one of one. Only you can host the event that you can host, and so therefore only you can get that kind of content. And I think that's quite special, particularly in a world where you have the ability to essentially copy everyone. So that there's a value from a positioning standpoint. Then outside of that, as a marketing funnel, a reason I like events, and this is something my mentor taught me, is it allows you to connect the scale of the internet with in-person close rates.
Interesting. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so online marketing is like when you create a funnel, it is like sticking a straw in the ocean. And so a lot of people just don't comprehend the level of scale that you have access to across platforms and across channels. Like you're talking about billions of people who access the internet on a daily basis. And then most funnels get excited when there's thousands of people go through it.
Yeah.
So there's a level of scale that it really isn't appreciated. Regarding the in-person close rates, a reason why online info is often harder than people anticipate with sales teams is because it takes skill to close someone on the phone.
It's harder, right? There's more resistance.
It is.
Distance between you.
Yeah, and you have to. There's more skill. When it comes to selling in person or at an event, you can control the environment, and so you often will see a higher close rate as a result. And so this is why brick and mortar can be a really like good model, is because you're able to close in person for people who come into the shop.
Yeah.
And so the ability to connect the two makes a pretty scalable funnel if you wanted to pursue that as a model.
Mm-hmm. This is something I've noticed, and a few people that have scaled digital businesses say is like they look at brick and mortar and they're like, this is so easy in comparison. The online world is a lot more competitive. Yes, like you said, it's easy to get in front of more people, but it's harder to monetize that, I think, to a super high level. And also quality control issues, I think, are higher at scale for digital businesses.
Yeah.
Is this, so just beyond events, just thinking more generally, is this kind of a benefit you think of taking kind of the online acquisition piece and pairing it with like a brick and mortar business and taking that online skill set? Is that also the way to go?
I think so. Yes. I think there's two factors worth considering. One is the closing mechanism. A reason a lot of funnels don't perform is because they lack what I would call bite. They lack the ability to sell.
Is that a closing problem or is that something else?
It's a sales problem. So if the funnel is a high ticket sales, like getting people on a phone call, quite often the art form is in the sales management, being able to scale that up with closes and maintain close rates.
This degrades at scale, and this is what you're seeing at a lot of info businesses, right?
Yeah, it degrades at scale because often the operational challenges. It really does take a skilled sales manager to start ramping up closes, because everything that happens over here, if close rate drops or show rate drops, then your ROAS drops and your cost to acquire a customer increase. And in a high ticket model where you start having increased operational costs, the new sales team that you brought on, 10% commission rates or more, the ad spend, the agency, more fulfillment, your margins start going down. And so you then start operating this machine on razor thin margins that becomes a pig, basically. So that's one of the challenges. And then the other thing is just a lot of media buyers will tell you that it's actually very easy to get leads. Like, it's not leads that is the issue. It's the ability to close the leads. What happens after someone clicks the link? Where do they go? How do you then close that? And the reality is a lot of people make impotent sales presentations or impotent presentations or impotent funnels that are incapable of taking a cold lead and converting them. And they then blame advertising when the issue is their sales funnel.
So would you say there's a lot of wastage in the funnels of online businesses?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. But you don't, like, it sounds counterproductive, but there's a lot of wastage anyway. If you look at direct response, you're only really targeting 5% of the buyers at any given time. And some of the best campaigns that scale to multi millions have a 2% conversion rate. So there is a lot of wastage, and it's just kind of baked into the cake.
That's just the nature of the business model.
It is,
okay. Can we kind of move past acquisition and kind of this side of the conversation and just talk kind of generally? Because my take, we've known each other a few years now. Yeah. My take is that you're like one of the best kind of brains in terms of coming up with offers, positioning, putting it in front of people and just like looking at the offer or at the kind of business from the kind of top-down view and seeing where the lever needs to be placed to kind of generate things. And I just want to get your thoughts on, just some theory stuff, if that's okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So when you're looking at kind of like a new opportunity, I'm assuming the first place you start is kind of the market that opportunity is in. How do you evaluate the market? Like, what do you look at?
Yeah. So I'll kind of look at three things. One is the TAM. So that's the total addressable market. Like, how big is this opportunity? Who are the people that it's going to speak to? Next is a level of passion. So I think you can sell a lot of things. In order to sell something well, though, I think requires both skill and a level of depth. And I do think there's an element of like, are you going to enjoy going into this space? Because
So you mean the kind of passion and interest of the founder or the team?
yeah, I would say so. Like, it's a bit of a trite one, and it's not
Love
like
what you do.
cold-nosed businessman type thing. But I do think I think you should sell stuff that you believe in,
Yeah.
and I do think that would be a piece that I would personally look at. And then the other thing is just market research. So what are the sales numbers with ad spy tools or certain tools? If you're looking at Amazon, you can see sales data for how well an offer is performing. And so if there's an indication that a business is making a lot of money with it, that's also a good sign that there's buyers, and you'll be able to also make something work.
Okay. Are you doing in-depth analysis of competition, or are you just looking for the signs of competition?
It depends on the project. If I was starting something off from scratch, I'd probably do a pretty in-depth analysis of like who are the top 10 guys.
Mm-hmm.
Get as much information as I can on them.
Is that in terms of going through the funnels, products, upsells, etc.?
Yes.
Okay.
So
Channels of acquisition.
yeah, one of the reasons why we met is I was funnel hacking the guy's marketing who we were looking at, and funnel hacking, quote unquote. But what I would do is I would go and speak to the sales guys.
Yeah.
Like, I would actually go through the entire funnel, and in some instances, if the ads didn't look like they were making sense from an economic standpoint, like, how are they spending so much on ads when the product is, let's say, $1,000? Suggest that there's going to be an ascension. And so at that point, I would also sometimes buy the product to see what the next level of service would be. And so I would compile all of that across, as mentioned, the top 5 to 10 guys. And then I would see where the weak points are. And I would see if it's in e-com, what are the reviews saying? Top 5-star reviews and the bottom ones. Where are the flaws in the product that we can potentially make it better? And all of that would go in the preparation for the marketing later on.
Okay. Are you looking at trends in the market?
Yes. So I think trends are super valuable. I do think there's a nuance between a fad and a trend. So a fad being a fidget spinner. I think if you were to mistaken a fad for a trend, and you go and, let's say, buy a truckload of fidget spinners to then discover that it just falls off a cliff, you wouldn't be in a great spot.
So you're looking at macro trends, like, Western population is aging.
Yeah,
That's
like
what you mean by
something with a little bit more legs behind it.
Yeah.
So maybe it's indications that it's going to be around for several months or years, not just this is a flash in the pan, people are excited about it.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd look at with regards to the market?
Sales data, where it's going / the trends, the customers. I'd look at who's buying it, because sometimes there's an example to take a product that works really well for one audience, and with a fresh angle, you can go after a completely new demographic
That isn't currently being served.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you identify that demographic or that ICP?
So you would look at, this is where the reviews come in. And when you're looking at the product, it may be the case that you can tell that it would make sense for an older demographic. So a surprising thing is, for a lot of make money online offers, it may be a young 20-year-old in the advertising, but the real buyers are actually the older generation.
Yeah.
They're 60-year-old men and women who feel like they've missed the stock market and they want a new income for themselves. You wouldn't really be able to tell that from the advertising. But like, just knowing that as an example, maybe you would shift your marketing. You would have an older person in the ads.
Yep.
And you can start to compete in new and different ways.
Okay. In terms of the next step, I'm assuming this is kind of like evaluating an offer or coming up with an offer and trying to find product market fit. Do you have like thoughts or a kind of process around that?
Yeah, if the business has existing assets, I would like to leverage those.
Mm-hmm.
So where possible, lower the cost and lower the risk for launching. So lowest cost would be launching to an existing email list or warm audiences. So social media, your owned assets, maybe JV partners. Do you have other lists within your network? Test the offer to that. If there are signs that it is working, i.e. you're making sales, then starting to branch that out into colder traffic. That would be how I would approach it in many instances.
Okay, so you kind of start from owned audience on one end and cold traffic on the other, and
Yep.
you just work down that spectrum.
Yeah.
Okay, and is that to minimize risk?
Yeah, I would say so. Minimize risk and minimize cost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you know? I mean, this is probably the $1 million question. How do you know you've got product market fit?
Yeah. That's a really good question.
Because I see a lot of businesses getting started. Let's take ecom, for example, where they kind of break even.
Yeah.
They can't scale and they're just kind of trundling along.
Mm.
Is that product market fit? Is that like, I just need to tweak the funnel? Or is that we need to go back to the drawing board and come up with a different offer?
I think it's just a series of tweaking and testing until you crack it. Like, a commonality I've seen is the founder has tested more than anyone else to get something working. So like I can think of people who've set up successful online education businesses and their sales mechanism is a webinar. And the way that they've made to make something that sells is they've gone and done live pitches every week for like a year straight to be able to create a pitch that they could then automate. And so I don't think it's a question of like you just magically arrive at product market fit. I think it's a series of tests.
Yeah.
And people just don't test the offer enough to find what truly like resonates. What is the price point? What is the packaging? What is the method to sell it?
Yeah.
There are offers that you can sell really well from a webinar or really well on a sales page that would flop trying to sell some other means. And so testing until it kind of makes sense, until I guess you're making money with it.
Okay. That is, I feel like, a very painful answer for many.
It is a painful answer, but it's not easy.
Yeah.
And I actually think that's what's cool about it, because it means less people can follow you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do have some knowledge that other people don't have, it does give you an advantage.
I guess the counter question, though, is when should you pull the plug or pivot to go in a different direction? At what point of like testing and iterations and things are slowly improving but still not quite there? At what point do you quit and try something completely different?
I'd say a year minimum. Like, again, looking at the founders who I've seen truly be successful, they've had a far more tolerance to pain than others.
Yeah.
And they have been less likely to quit.
Again, just playing devil's advocate, is this not an issue of time, though? Of like, in that year, you could have stumbled on a better market or a better kind of offer if you just pivoted earlier.
Yeah, you absolutely could do. There is definitely an opportunity cost. But I think if you do enough research ahead of time of like, this is a market that you want to go into, like it shouldn't take, to be clear, it shouldn't take a year to see product market fit. You can you can see far ahead of that. But when business owners have come to me in the past and said, like, what budget should I have for ads?
3 times your CPA, right?
Yeah, like there's stuff like that, but it's like, let's say that you do three times CPA and you test it for 3 months and you still haven't made it work. And then what? Yeah. Like a lot of founders go like, I've tried ads and they don't work.
Yeah.
But there's people in their space that are making fortunes from advertising. And the reason I take quite a hard stance on the flip side is, imagine if you did 1 more month and you cracked ads. What would that be worth to you? So when people ask me like, what budget should I have and like how long should I test for, I say that you should just do all the research you can ahead of time. If you determine it's a course of action worth pursuing, you do it until it works.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, there is an opportunity cost, but if you're not making it work, it's probably because you're not good enough.
Yep.
And so by sticking to it, you can then start getting the skills to get good enough.
So get used to chewing glass is the advice.
Yeah, I would say so. Because like, imagine if you do decide to swap, the same problems that you're currently struggling with now, you might just be bringing into a new opportunity.
Yeah.
Like, and if you're not good enough there, what suddenly makes you good enough here?
So this is the issue with people with that shiny object syndrome, right? Is they just think that, oh, this next shiny object will solve the problems that I've had, but the same problems will just occur on the new
I would say so.
opportunity.
For like, again, it's for the most part. There are like, I'm trying to keep it general, but there are, I think for most
on
people,
the fringes, there's other cases, but
yeah,
no, I hear you.
I think most people give up too soon.
Okay. So the next stage, we found kind of product market fit. The next stage is kind of scaling. How do you look at scaling? Is it different channels? Is it different products? What do you think of when I say scaling?
Yeah, what comes to mind first is a way to sell the thing. So when you scale something, you scale everything. And so is the method that you're using to sell it in the first place, A, does that work? Or do you have that? And then B, how does that scale? So with a sales team, as an example, you can kind of staircase a sales team.
Mm-hmm.
So with a webinar that books phone calls or a VSL that books phone calls, you can start off with one closer. You run ads until his availability goes down. Then you bring on a new guy. And then you can increase ad spend and then so on and so forth. But very often you'll run into organizational challenges, which then impact your ability to do that stepping.
Okay. And what are your thoughts on kind of the lead flow and the marketing side of the pie? And by that, I mean, at what stage are you adding other channels and more complexity?
It's different for every business. I think the question comes down to risk of how much risk are you prepared to accept on having a single channel.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean by that?
So let's say you just built your business of meta ads and your meta ad account goes under. That's quite a large risk to the business.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very large risk if the business is doing, let's say, 3 million a month as an example, and it's all on meta. Like,
I know a lot of info businesses that seem to be scaled off of entirely one channel.
Yeah,
Like ads.
it is increasingly common, and for most people, it actually makes a lot of sense because it does take work to set up another channel. When it comes to setting up another channel, I would consider the time and the skills of do you have that ability to do it in the first place? Because it's not always as easy as it works on Meta, it'll work on YouTube.
Yep.
There are nuances on how you can
Different audiences, different
audiences, or just like
setups,
different intent.
Yeah.
Like you have to write really good ads for YouTube because you're competing with kind of like the Mr. Beasts or YouTubers whose full-time
Netflix
job
style content.
Yeah, is to make videos that people watch and get clicked on.
Yeah.
So your ads have to be, to a degree, somewhat better than that.
Versus a picture of Susan on her night out.
Yeah, on Meta, exactly. And so YouTube is harder in that sense.
Okay.
But when you crack it, there is a lot of money to be made on YouTube.
Okay. So where do you sit in terms of like just keep doubling down on one channel to, diversifying and having less risk?
Yeah. For the most part, I would say sit on the one channel and keep doubling down. Again, on the level of scale side of things, there are people spending 100 grand a day on Meta. And so 10,000, 5,000 a day or 10,000 a day isn't actually that much in the scheme of things, given what the platform can cope with.
Okay. So is that kind of the thought process then? Double down on the one that's working, that you know the best,
for most
until
entrepreneurs.
results start to degrade?
For most
or
entrepreneurs.
you think there's a massive risk of the business?
I'd say for most entrepreneurs, keep doubling down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Find one thing, do one thing. Expert at one thing.
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay. Can we talk now about kind of expanding the product suite? So not, front end stays the same.
Okay.
We've got that now down. At what point do we start to add upsells, downsells, kind of all this other stuff on the back end?
I think the advice or the opinions differ on this one. I'd say less is more. So it depends on what the upsells and the downsells are, and how they are sold. Because again, on the topic of operational complexity,
Yeah.
every time you introduce a new product, you potentially introduce a new sales process.
Okay. Just for reference here, and I don't know if I don't want to say the name, but there's an info business that I'm thinking of, and probably many in this situation that's 8 figures revenue with one product, right?
Yeah.
So my thought process then is if you're not at 8 figures, you should probably not be adding on more complexity in other products. Is that a fair point, or is that?
I think that's an interesting one. I think it depends on who the entrepreneur is. Because if the entrepreneur is really good at organization, if they add a back end on, it could shift the entire economics of the business. That without even getting better, they could just start spending more on Meta because they know they make money. And so there is an element of like a revenue threshold if you wanted to pursue it like that, but I would look at the entrepreneur.
Okay. So it's entrepreneur dependent, not funnel dependent.
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay. So what does that mean in reality? If the entrepreneur is good at product creation and there's an opportunity in that business, they should maybe look at it?
Yeah, I would test it.
Okay.
Because from a numbers standpoint, you can win on psychology, so the appeals and the sales argument you take to the marketplace. But you can also just win on maths, or the economics you use. Like a great example I like mentioning is in the fat loss market. There are only a certain number of ways you can say how to lose weight.
Yeah.
And so if you've got two businesses both making that claim of here's how to lose weight, but one company A can spend $200 to acquire a customer,
Yeah.
but company B can spend $5,000 to acquire a customer, just by virtue of their superior pricing, product B can start winning in the ad auctions.
Okay. So yeah, there's, contrary to what I kind of said before, there's another funnel that I'm thinking of that as soon as you kind of buy product 1, you're immediately upsold to product 2. What do you think about that whole kind of ascension journey setup, I guess?
I think it's really smart because it's based on human psychology. So there is a real thing where, from a psychological perspective, people enter a buying frenzy or an elevated emotional state after they buy something.
Yeah.
And so psychologically, they're actually far more likely to buy more things like that in a window of time. And so if you're a business that doesn't leverage that, then those customers are potentially just going to go elsewhere and buy. And so an ascension actually makes quite a lot of sense from congruence with psychology. And that's why, whether it's info or even e-commerce, having those upsells is just a great way of increasing the average order value or the LTV. And there's some known psychological frameworks that you can use for an upsell, such as more of the same. So whatever someone has just bought, giving them more of that. So with coaching, as an example, let's say they've just bought an info product course, upselling them the same promise, just with more coaching attached to it, is a way to do the ascension. Another one is problem solution. So by buying the first thing, what is the new problem it opens up that the upsell can then solve? So in the credit space, as an example, let's say someone's just bought a product on how to fix their credit, and now they see it's a lot of work to do so, and they don't want to do that. The upsell could be an advisor or a support service that does everything for them. So it's basically automated. So therefore, the assumption there would make sense. And where you can have that congruency with the front and the back end, that will increase take rates. And you're working with psychology, which is one of the reasons why it works in the first place.
But again, it's almost kind of like a painful answer, right? In the sense that you don't know, you just got to test all this stuff and keep iterating and figure it out. Yeah.
I would use psychology as your guide, but
the answer is different for every business as well, right?
The answer is different for every business. Okay. Yeah.
Is there a framework you guys would look through that? making that kind of decision about, should we have an upsell? Where should it go? What should that upsell be? Etc.
Yeah, is there a framework? I would say that the framework is based on revenue. If they're at a certain point and let's say capped on ad spend, increasing LTV is one way to unlock a new level of ad spend because you can just spend more money on ads.
So it almost goes back to a first principle of bottlenecks. So what is the bottleneck in the business?
Yeah.
If it is kind of acquisition, focus on that, focus on more leads.
Yeah.
If it's kind of, acquisition as degraded or capped out, maybe fix the funnel structure. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I would say so. It's very much going back to first principles. Where is the constraint? What is the constraint within the business or is the constraint within the marketing? And the nuance there is often the business will have a constraint, but you can use that same philosophy for a marketing funnel when you're looking at the throughput. What is where is the drop off? That drop off can often represent the constraint.
Yep.
Is your opt-in performing, as an example? If it's below KPI, then that is an indication that if you improve that, you send more traffic through and you'll make more sales.
Yep. Okay. Can we shift gears slightly now and just talk kind of marketing in general? And I want to pick back up on the kind of affiliate point that you made. You've obviously done direct mail as well, and it seems like a lot of success that you've had is in, I don't want to say doing the opposite of what a lot of people are doing, but it seems like everyone's doing kind of content and ads. And you're saying, email, direct mail, affiliates are, driving significant chunks of revenue. What do you think, or how do you look at kind of going to where attention is cheaper and is not kind of saturated with what everyone else is doing?
Yeah. So firstly, I'd say the reason I've seen success in those areas is because of the direct response background. So it's partly a function of what I learnt, quote unquote, growing up my skill set. The reason I thrive in those areas is because I learned how to sell and print.
So it's kind of your unique background rather than seeking out these underserved channels.
Exactly.
Got it.
But then when it comes to cheap traffic, I'd put that in a separate bucket. And I would say if you can get it, you have a huge opportunity to build a sizable business. Again, there's Mark Twain quote, which is history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme.
Yeah.
It's the same with advertising. The advertising has cycles, and you can see those cycles if you study advertising history. And
what's the cycle we're in now?
So from an online standpoint, I would say we're moving heavily away from VSLs, more back to low ticket. So low ticket book funnels, low ticket products, product funnels.
Why are we moving in that direction?
Ad costs have got slightly higher. But in addition to that, there's an element of market sophistication in a lot of the high ticket funnels.
Yeah.
People just they know what a discovery call is now. Or they know what a strategy call is.
The schemes.
Yeah. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs have also been burnt out by low margin running sales team businesses where revenue looks good, but profit is just in the toilet.
Yeah.
I think a lot of them don't enjoy running that model and are looking for better ways to acquire customers.
Okay. So what does that funnel look like then? So it's kind of, organic or, any other channel to these kind of low ticket products?
Yeah.
Where do businesses or where should they go from there?
Broadly speaking, it's, if you look at CAC to LTV on a spectrum, with ad costs kind of superimposed on it. Yeah. The reality is platforms have different costs. And so LinkedIn is some of the more expensive advertising.
Hard to scale as well, right?
Yeah, and so you're looking at selling more expensive items there. Conversely, Meta is somewhere in the middle. And then you've got things like organic or TikTok or maybe Snapchat on the left-hand side, where you can buy cheap traffic and it's sometimes better for certain product types and categories.
Yep.
So there is a definite channel product fit that I think a lot of people don't consider. I learned this when I was working within an agency, and we tried selling chocolate bars on Meta. This brand had crushed it on TikTok.
Yeah.
Their organic was amazing. They'd gone viral. They had a viral playbook with chocolate, and we came in as an agency at the time and just thought, you know what, we can run this on Meta and make lots of money. But the reality is there are costs involved with running Meta, and like there's not much margin in selling a $5 chocolate bar when your CPA
It's $15.
is $15. Exactly. And so that's where you have to like think about bundling and all of that stuff.
The offer.
Yeah, and that was a super valuable learning lesson, which seems obvious now,
Yeah.
but it wasn't obvious at the time. And so when it comes to cheap traffic, it is cheaper to sell lower ticket items, which mean that you can often buy more traffic as a result, because it just changes the economics of a funnel. Like,
Do you mean get the offer in front of more people?
yeah, so like KPIs of a call booking funnel, you're looking at spending $200 to $300
Yeah.
to get someone on a phone call. Like, it's expensive, and like with a 30% close rate, you're looking at maybe a CPA of somewhere between
Grand.
1,200 or 2,000 plus.
Yeah.
So like to test that funnel with maybe a 14-day sales cycle, you have to throw several $1,000s into it before you know if it's going to be successful or not. Where I like low ticket is, let's say the CPA of a book funnel is $100.
Mm-hmm.
You can spend a couple of $100 and you kind of know like directionally how it's going to go. Oftentimes, even before that, like the CPA is just so much cheaper.
And are you trying to break even on that?
Ideally make money.
Okay.
Quite often it will start to break even as you scale it up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you have to then get creative with the creative and all the CRO on the page.
Okay. I guess what I'm trying to get at though is what is next after that kind of low ticket product? Like, are you trying to ascend people? Are you trying to create a community? What are you doing with those purchases?
You're trying to send people.
Okay.
So
To the high ticket.
to high ticket, yeah.
So is it almost like instead of going straight to the high ticket with a cool funnel, you're just kind of putting a step in between?
Yeah, you're selling to buyers instead of cold leads. And let's just use Meta as an example. I think product-led growth as the overarching principle is definitely something worth investing in. And from a purely advertising standpoint, Meta can optimize based off of buyers. So if people are buying your low ticket, you can basically bring more of that exact person into your funnel, and you can scale that up.
Okay. Is there anything else you would kind of advise, in this space? So in that kind of low ticket world?
Yeah, if you can figure out affiliates, the way that they are using it right now from ecom, and apply that to info, I think you'll do remarkably well. Andrew Tate is obviously a poster boy for pulling that off.
Yep.
And then there's another guy called Philip Johansson who's based out in Europe, who's done a similar thing with his kind of VSL funnel.
Yep.
Who scaled it with affiliates.
Okay.
I think that's a really interesting idea right now.
Okay. The final piece I want to touch on in this kind of theoretical side of things is margins. So you said kind of, in the info world, they've taken a bit of a hit. We all know ad costs are up.
Yeah.
What do you think is, and maybe this is a question you can't answer, but if you could try and give kind of a rough ballpark, what is like a decent margin that you see in kind of the info space at scale?
Yeah. I would take a leaf out of ecom's book. So at scale, going closer to like 30%.
Okay.
Yeah, 30% margins.
And are you saying that because it shrinks with scale?
It starts to, yeah, because you bring on more people. But you make more money because of the total sum is much larger.
Yeah. And we were talking about this kind of outside, right, in the sense that there's a lot of info businesses that seem to cap, whether through choice or not, at a certain size, with high margins, and they kind of never scale beyond that. Is that where you see kind of the decision tree almost of like keep it small, high margin lifestyle business, you know, maybe 7, low 8 figures. And then is it beyond that where you're saying, like, if you're going to scale, margins drop to kind of 30%?
Yeah, you know what? I think that's pretty accurate as a. I think that's pretty accurate. Yeah,
Okay.
like my dad and I actually had a discussion about it because we were talking about multi-billion-dollar corporations, and their margins might be closer to like 10%, or
Everyone always laughs at me when I say this, of like,
yeah,
the margins of businesses at scale are not like info and ecom.
no,
They're like bedroom brands, right?
it's actually insane.
Yeah.
Like, but they make fortunes because of the level of scale that they're
Yeah.
operating at.
But the
And-
margin is sub 10%, unless it's a tech business, right? Which
Yeah.
is, slightly different.
Yeah, and so I think we get very spoiled in the info.
Yeah.
We're used to just making quite a lot of like cash flow, and are not prepared to sacrifice it for the next level.
Okay. I would slightly disagree on your point, though, and I would say at scale,
Yeah.
ecom businesses' margins are typically lower than that kind of 30%. I would say kind of 10 to 20% at the 8-figure level.
Yes.
And then they're reinvesting the inventory or reinvesting the profit back into inventory. So it's kind of like profit on paper, not in your bank.
Yeah.
And I think and I want to get to the point of kind of evaluating the two business models here.
Yes.
So that is certainly the kind of like pro on the info side, is that margins are higher. What do you think about exit value though? Because, you know, certainly on the ecom side, you can sell for 1 times revenue plus, you know, fairly common to sell your brand at an 8-figure level.
Yeah.
A lot of buyers out there. Is that true for info?
Yeah, I think it's certainly far less common. Like when I'm looking at, I haven't seen many info businesses sell, and the ones that I have seen,
Which is interesting given where you work, right?
yeah, but like that's because info is notoriously difficult to sell.
Why is that?
I just don't think it's an attractive proposition for an outside person. And
Because of key man risk, because it's often not a shoddy, well, it's often a shoddy business and it's not got proper systems and processes, or
all of the above.
Okay.
There's key man risk around the guru. There's operational challenges of like, if it is a guru-led business, then the engaged audience is potentially only there for that person. Operations are lacking. Like the info businesses that I've seen even get offers, it's because they are packaged differently. They're not even labeled as info businesses. They've got like a licensing component to it, or like certification, or
do they also serve a B2C market still, or have they evolved?
no, it's not specific to B2B
Okay.
or B2C. It's just taking a step back. There's an element of strategic importance to the acquirer. Like, they're not buying it because of the information in the course. They're buying it because of some underlying asset or positioning that the company enjoys that they think would benefit their portfolio. And so for info founders who are looking at selling, I would be considering who that end buyer is and what strategic importance or what story you can put in the marketplace that's going to make it more susceptible to a buyer to wanting to even invest in the first place.
Okay. And then kind of build your business in that direction. So maybe start removing yourself from the marketing.
For sure.
Stuff.
Like, yeah, starting to remove yourself. Like when I said, like, treating it as a university as opposed to like a single teacher.
Yeah.
It's so that it's not attached to one person.
Do you think, and this might be controversial, do you think a lot of info businesses, do you think their management team have the ability and foresight to build a business to exit?
Some of them.
If we compare it to the universe of ecom.
No,
brand owners,
no.
for example.
I think ecom has a lot more savvier operators because they've had to figure out operations. They've had to figure out inventory and forecasting and like lower margins in the first place.
Yeah.
I think there are savvier operators in ecom.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
My final kind of question on this, because I don't want to knock anyone in the info space, but I watched a video with Ayman Gaji recently, and his point was the kind of end goal, or how he sees kind of an info business's end goal, is get it to kind of high 7 figures, low 8 figures annual revenue, keep the margins as high as possible, keep that for cash flow. Don't try and optimize it for exit, because then it's kind of a different beast, as we've discussed.
Yeah.
And then kind of use your traffic or your brand or your capital to go onto other ventures that are probably better suited to exit. Do you think that's a good kind of analysis of the situation for most info founders?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
For sure. Like we spoke about info being high margin and really good for cash. There's a lot of things you can buy with cash that are actually assets. Like property is a super easy one. It doesn't require a genius to pull that off as a strategy. Just make money in info, throw it in real estate, and just build over time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to put this back onto you in a second, but final question on this is there an issue with that kind of line of thought, in the sense that over time that info business will degrade, whether it's, you know, the market moves on and the offer's not as interesting, you know, people struggle to get traffic, whatever the reason may be, but do you think it's possible to kind of sustain that, or do you think it kind of naturally degrades over time?
I think it will naturally degrade over time. Most infos are opportunities, or like, we'll use BizOp as an example. The business opportunity has a window of time where it's an opportunity. Like all good opportunities are a running man. And they do have a window where you can take advantage of it.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the caveat is skill-based info businesses. So things like how to learn piano or learn a language, those ones you can run for years. Okay. That's a really exciting info space. That I don't think a lot of people actually realize how much money those ones make. Yeah. To be quite honest, like I'm consistently surprised when I see something skill-based like that, and run for years, super profitable. Lots of people are interested in playing piano, and it's clean as well. It's not like it's a compliance nightmare where you're promising money at a discount. You're telling people you can teach them how to play piano. Yeah. And there's some wonderful like membership sites built off of that. Or those ones, like if you were to split info into like BizOp versus like skill-based, BizOp, you might run into challenges around having to repackage the offer every few years because the opportunity has changed, versus being able to like go deep in a skill-based info thing. Mm-hmm.
I know I said final question. I've got one more on this topic.
Yeah.
Going back to kind of Ayman and what he's done is he's, you know, built the audience, sold the info, and then launched a SaaS to that kind of community to get that initial traction, and then I believe kind of finding other traffic channels and kind of scaling beyond the info. I know Hormozi's kind of obviously done something similar before. What do you think of that kind of approach?
I think it's smart, just generally. Like, but you are seeing info run into the same. Sorry, you're seeing Iman run into the same challenges that we just talked about. Like, he no longer is the SMMA guy. Yeah. When he announced that he got rid of his agency, that was it wasn't the immediate death, but it was certainly having a tail effect of I forget what that program was, but selling SMMA as an opportunity. If you look at what he promotes now, since then he still does agency stuff, but now he's also moving into personal branding as a next opportunity. And so like Iman's smart, but I think he has seen like the opportunity has moved on a little bit. At least in the sense of like the market sophistication has moved on. And so the new sexy thing is personal brand, or it is for a certain set segment of the market, which I think is who he appeals to. Yeah.
Is there anything else you would want to add on what we've just talked about there? So like exits, analysis of the different business models, where things end up and stuff like that.
Yeah. I think exits are overrated.
Explain.
It depends what level of scale you're talking about. an ecom brand exiting for like 300 million, 600 million, cool.
Yeah.
You know?
Most are not quite at that level there, right?
No. But again, I think it goes back to like level of scale. I really would like to, I guess, encourage anyone who's watching this, like, think bigger. Like massively bigger. Like viewing the internet as the ocean and a funnel as a straw just changes your perspective. Like I was talking to an agency owner, I think we talked about this the other day, and a thing that just separated the best entrepreneurs that he'd met is they just thought bigger. Like they could have been in this exact same space of, let's say, agency, but where most people would think in terms of their yardstick being 7 figures or 8 figures, they were thinking in terms of billions.
Yeah.
And so that's just a diversion there. But on the exit being overrated, if it's a really good business that someone actually wants to buy, it's a really good business. And so you're selling an asset to potentially start again, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So let's just say that the exit is 8 figures. You put 10 million in your bank. What happens if you're the kind of entrepreneur that gets bored?
What's next?
What's next?
Yeah.
Exactly. Like if there's a play afterwards that you want the 8 figures to go and run up a multi-billion-dollar whatever it is, or something like a bigger play that you need the money for, then I think that's then worth it. But I think for a lot of people, they do it because it sounds good, or they want to go for it because it sounds good.
It's
and
like
then,
the ego checkbox, right?
yeah, and then on the flip side of that is like, well, they've just lost all their cash flow, and they have to like rebuild
and
that
they leverage
somehow.
their team, their whatever they had in
Yeah,
that business, right?
yeah, the team
Yeah.
that they've just built for the last however many years. When starting a new thing, they have to rebuild the whole team again.
Yeah.
And again, it depends on how old they are, but like I'd say for a lot of young entrepreneurs, like why would you exit if you truly believe in the company? Like if you think it could go to 300 million, do that.
A wise man once told me you only exit your business if you think it's on the decline or you get a super silly offer.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty wise statement. If you get a super silly offer, then yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
But I've seen entrepreneurs get incredibly bored after they've sold.
Yeah.
And they just go back to doing exactly what they did previously.
Mm-hmm.
And they
With
could
less leverage.
Yeah. And so they do it better the next time around.
Faster.
But they're still rebuilding.
Okay. Any thoughts on the differences between kind of the online space models, business models?
When it comes to ideas, I like taking stuff from ecom and applying it to info.
Why?
I think ecom is ahead of the game when it comes to customer acquisition.
Okay.
They're in a space where getting 10,000 customers a day is doable.
Mm-hmm.
Info, you'll get 10,000 customers a day and you're absolutely crushing it. And so, and again, on the topic of margins, ecom guys are getting these customers with razor thin margins or fewer margins. And so I just think they're ahead of the game when it comes to creative, getting attention, where is the cheap traffic, all of that stuff. And so I've seen quite a lot of success studying what works in ecom and bringing those ideas to the info space. Like the stuff that I was doing in ecom email marketing years ago, I've been applying happily in the info space.
Yeah.
And only now am I seeing some of the info guys catch up to stuff that I was doing years ago. It's given me a very real arbitrage of skill.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the reasons I'm even in Dubai today speaking with you is going to ecom events to see how 8-figure brand owners or 9-figure brand owners are scaling their ecom brands. What are they doing that info are not doing?
Mm-hmm.
Where is that gap? And playing in that gap.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got a few ideas, and
Interesting.
that's what I'm going to go off and implement
Nice.
over the next 12 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tobias, it has been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you, Jordan.
Before we go, is there anything else you wanna kind of add or touch on that we haven't covered?
It's fucking noisy, excuse my language, out there. I do think there's a benefit to just locking yourself in the room and getting the work done.
Yeah.
and being very mindful of the circle and the sources of information that you allow in.
Okay.
A lot of what's online is hyperbolic, because what gets attention on social media is by nature the outliers.
Yeah.
It's either super relatable stuff or it's the Mr. Beast style content.
Yeah.
And that's what is getting attention. Like, the outliers always get attention, and I think it skews reality. So I think for founders, their ability to switch off and control their inputs is something that will give them a real edge.
Okay. Thank you for coming on. And then final question. I know you are a bit of a recluse. Where can people find you if they want to follow along?
My LinkedIn would be the best spot, to be honest. That's the only place where I'm remotely public.
Content? Or?
I posted the occasional.
Okay.
I've used it for recruitment in the past.
Okay.
But yeah, that would be the platform I go on more often than not.
Okay. And will you be posting more content and being more public, or will we just get an annual podcast?
Great question. Potentially. So I recently got advice from a friend, and part of the reason I'm even sitting here today is because I've asked people who are much smarter than me for advice, and then I followed it.
Mm-hmm.
And their advice was I should start doing more podcasts.
Yeah.
And here I am. So there is a good chance that I will be doing more podcasts.
Good.
Or more content.
I think you have a lot of knowledge to share. And I think in terms of widening your network, I think it will do wonders.
Thank you.
So I definitely recommend it, because like I said at the start, you are one of the most knowledgeable guys in the space that I know.
Thank you,
It's been
John.
a pleasure speaking with you.
Yeah, likewise.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, dude.
Cool.
Cool.